And now let's add the CSS to our website. I'm so excited about this. So here is your syntax of a CSS style rule. So we call, in programming, we refer to the way that the code is written as its syntax. And that is both the spelling and the logic of your code. So if you have a syntax error, that can refer to a typo, but it can also refer to like having the words in the wrong order. So in CSS we have the selector, which would be paragraph, for example, the paragraph tag, or the body tag, or it could be special tags that we make ourselves that we'll look at. And then we have this opening and closing of a curly brace, and that contains all of the CSS code, all the properties and definitions that we will be putting on our elements. And we'll have the property name followed by a colon, and then the description. And then they stack one on top of the other within the curly braces, and the selectors with their information stack one on top of the other in the document as well. So that's your basic structure. There was a nice, this looks nice too. But this is an example, a good example, because it has content inside of it. So you have your selector, for example, the P tag is just referenced as P, so we write it without the braces, and then we declare what we want to be going on inside of the P tag. We choose the properties, so we could be talking about font size, we could be talking about color, whatever, and then we choose the value. So in this case, we're choosing a font size of 12. All right, so let's try that in practice. So the CSS, this is called a inline style sheet. So we're going to make a small style sheet within our HTML document. So we're going to open a style tag, and then we're going to say type. So what kind of styling are we doing? Although I'm not familiar with any other kind besides CSS out there, but anyway, we say the type. So we're going to say type equals, and this is these are kind of the attributes of HTML tags, the standard format of an attribute to an HTML tag. We have the name of the attribute and then its value in quotation marks. So we're going to say the type is text/CSS. So that'll help the browser read correctly the tag that we're dealing with. And then we close the style tag, and for some reason everything is gray. Why? Did I misspell something? Okay, so now we're going to troubleshoot. Like everything is gray, except for this paragraph. What have I done to offend you? Cannot even guess. It's like, okay. How about I'm gonna save it and pull it into my browser, and if it renders correctly, it might be an error in Atom. So Atom might be seeing some character that I'm not seeing and rendering it out and making a strange color choice. So I might close it and then open it again. I'm gonna clean my desktop, you guys, for the next class, I promise. bad. Okay, so I've closed it and reopened it, and everything is colored correctly again. This is worth like taking a note of. Atom is itself a web technology. It's built in JavaScript, which we'll learn later in the semester, and probably has like some kind of markup language in it as well. So it's like many technologies upon many technologies, and sometimes they interact in funny ways. So just know that when something like that happens, it's not necessarily your fault. And a good way of testing that is just to close your document, like save and close your document, and then open it again and give it a chance to read the document from scratch, and it might be fine. So that's why I did that, and it is fine. Okay, so we're writing our CSS. So our first, I have this I love lasers marquee tag thing going, sliding around, and it's in a H1 tag. So I'm just going to say H1, and then open and close my brackets, and I want this to be red, of course. So this is my selector. My property that I'm going to change here is going to be the color, and I'll give it a colon, and then I'm going to say red. So the colors, we looked at hexadecimal color values in the lecture, but there's also a few basic colors that you could just type out, like red, purple, gray, that kind of thing. So I'm going to say I want it to be red and hit save, and then drag and drop it into Firefox, and lo and behold, it is red. And you can see up here that this is my local file, because the address is file : // so that's telling me that we're looking at a local file. And then it says users, Horace Vaculi, blah blah blah, which if we check this in terminal, you can drag, if you ever want to know the address of something in your computer, you can drag and drop a file directly into terminal, and it will give you the address. And you could see here, indeed, the address is users, Horace Vaculi, desktop, web design site, me, index.html. Okay, cool. So we're looking at that. That looks great. This is the old one. Let's do some more CSSing. I would also like the background of my entire web page to be a certain color. So maybe I'm going to say background color, and I can't do red. I don't know if this is an acknowledged color. Let's see. Okay, so that's not a color that CSS understands. So I'm going to look for hexadecimal color picker. And there's one conveniently located at W3 Schools. And I think this color, yes, this color. So that's my true value for light pink, and you can see it says FF here for the red value. So like all the way, we crank the F up all the way. B3, so this is actually cranked up pretty high as well, because there's a letter value in the G. And the blue also has a pretty high value, although it's not as high as F. It's D instead, but they're all pretty high, so that means that we're pretty close to white. We have all the color values cranked up really, really high. But then there's more there's more red than there is of the other colors. So that makes it pink. Okay, great. So one more thing maybe that we could do is we can change the fonts. And in changing the fonts, we can talk about how style sheets work. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. So the sheet part is the part where it's a separate file, although in this case it's not a separate file yet, but we'll make it a separate file soon. So we have like a sheet that specifies all of our style and look for our website. And the cascading part implies that it kind of like propagates from the topmost element to the bottommost element. So the fact that I set the background color in the body to pink means that it's going to be set that way everywhere. And the only way that I can change that now is, I mean, of course I can delete it here, but if I want it to be pink everywhere except for my, let's say, footer. I want my footer to be white. So I might say here, so it's at this moment, it's pink everywhere, including in the footer. But if I add the footer after it, and because the footer is like a smaller, the footer is contained within the body, I can overwrite it. So the same way that we overwrite our files, I can overwrite the content in the CSS code. So here I can say background color, and I want it to be something like this one, light orange. Now, these are hard to remember, so you can write a comment in here. So the way we write comments in CSS is 2 forward slashes, and I can say light orange. And you see here the color of this text is gray, which means that it's a comment, which is why I was confused when everything turned gray previously. So let's say the light orange, and this is light. And we'll drag and drop. And we have this, and we have light orange. Great. And you can also see this padding. So this is the CSS box at play here. There's this padding around that's giving my footer padding. So it's doing something I don't want it to do. I can take my web developer and look at the inspector. And I can say like, why? Where is this coming from? And scroll down on the footer. And we can see the CSS box that is around on the footer, and it looks like it doesn't have a margin. And we also see that this isn't rendering. So it took my comment line and it put it in line with the text below it. So that is annoying, and maybe that is why I have an error. Let's try it again. All right, I'm going to struggle with this later and tell you guys what the answer is, why that little bit is still there. I know it's the margin of something that is either the body or the footer. It's in the way. But just for the sake of class, I will move on and then make another video figuring out that margin. Okay, Okay, so we have our internal style sheet here. But for your assignment, you have to make an external style sheet as well as an internal style sheet and an inline style sheet. So let's do that now. So we have the way that we set this website to look, despite the light error on the bottom. It has a particular way of being. So if I take this and I highlight the contents of the style, and I Command X or Control X, cut it out, and save my file. Now it's gone, right? So I've removed the styling. And I want to put it in another document. So I'm going to hit Command N, make a new document, and paste just the contents of this CSS sheet in here. And then we're going to save it. And we want to save it in our local folder of our website. We'll keep it right here so that it's in the same folder as the pages that it's affecting. And I'm going to call it main.css. So it's another kind of text file that we can use to make our websites render themselves in an awesome way. Okay, so we have this file, but how do we link it to our index? So the way that we link it, and I usually just look this up every time, is with a link tag, and it's a CSS link tag. Okay, perfect. So that is something that's also would be in the head. So if you have, for your assignment, it asks you to have an embedded style sheet, an external style sheet, and inline style sheets. So the external style sheet is still linked in the head. It's where we do all of our linking and assembling of codes. So I'm going to paste that here. It has this rel, which is the kind of document we're linking, and then this href, which you should recognize from your link structure. And W3 Schools has their example named styles.css, but mine is named main, so I'm going to save it as that. And now if I drag and drop this into Firefox, it's pink again. So I've relinked my style sheet again. Great. Okay, and then just to show you inline, this is like the most odd and different way of writing CSS than the other two. So instead of having like CSS the way that it is supposed to be on its own, we're going to take that CSS and we're going to embed it inside HTML code. So we're writing one kind of markup language inside of another kind of markup language. It's a bit of a head twister. And we can take something like, this is a fairly simple one that we can have here. So this H1 color is red. So I'm going to comment it out, and it doesn't show up correctly as a comment. Just super weird. But it does, the red went away when I commented it out. So you see it's black now. But this is still color-coded. Very strange. And then we're going to go back in here. And the way that we would give it that same attribute, but within HTML code, is going to be, I believe, we write color. So we're giving it that attribute, but we write it the same way that we write all the other HTML attributes. So it'll have an equal sign, and then in quotation marks, we put red. And hopefully that will work. did not work. Okay. And that's when I ask Google or DuckDuckGo, inline, color, attribute, HTML. Aha, okay, so it says that we put the style, so we're encapsulating the entire style tag, not the particular property. So we're gonna say style equals, and then we have our whole thing in there. Okay, fine, we can do it that way. The reason I thought that it would be color equals is because in image, for example, we set width equals, so it's a little inconsistent in that way. I was preempting its logic, but my guess was wrong. Okay, so let's do style equals, and then I'll say color, and I'll replace the quotation marks with a colon and a semicolon. And now, is it going to be red? It's red again. Okay, so that's your inline style sheet. Let's do one more, just so that we can get the hang of it. So here maybe we can change the font. And I would really like it if all of the fonts on my webpage were monospaced. So monospace fonts are the fonts that are designed, they were originally designed for typewriters. So let me find one that looks like a typewriter font. Courier, for example. So this font, I'm sure you recognize, is that metal, like typewriter font that is like beaten from typewriter keys. And those are all the same size so that they interact with each other and line up perfectly every time, because all the keys are separate, so they need to be the same size so that they can line up, right? And I would like to use this font for my website, this font style. And so we're going to write it in the body. So now I know it has to be style equals. And then maybe font type. I'm not sure. I'm gonna look that up. Inline, font type, HTML. So I encourage you to do this kind of looking up as you're writing. HTML font tag. Okay. Here we go. Perfect. Style equals font family Courier new. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So that is going to change all of the fonts on my website. And let's see it in action. Here we go. Everything looks like it's been written on a typewriter. Fantastic. Now let's say that you want this font all over your website, but again, like maybe you don't want it down in your footer. So you can always overwrite something by placing it below. So here I can say style equals font family, and instead I'm going to say Arial. So Arial is the default kind of sans serif font in our browsers. And here we have it in a different font. So for your homework, you're going to have to change fonts, and the way that I look them up is you can just look for a list of web fonts, web safe fonts, and here's our list. So there's serif fonts. These are the ones with the little handles. I don't know if it zooms in when I zoom in like this, but they're the ones with the little feet on their legs, on their ascenders and descenders. Then we have sans serifs, so these are the straight, that's sans serif, but also cursive. And then we have monospace fonts, which are used usually to display code and things like that. So these are your native web fonts. These fonts exist on your computers, whether they're Apple or Windows, or should be Linux as well, or yeah, different Linux computers. So these are web safe fonts, and later on in the semester we'll look at bringing custom fonts into your website. So our class website, wherever it may be at this point. I may have hidden our class website. Oh, there it is. Our class website has custom fonts on it. And background images. Okay, so that's inline, embedded, and external style sheets. I'll put another rule over here just for your reference. Let's say paragraph. And I'm going to say I want the paragraph to be really big, so font size 24 pixels. All right, so now we have a very large paragraph.